So we'll start. Hello, everybody. I would like to ask you all to mute your microphones if you're not Dominique Rossetti from Scite or myself, I am from Tel Aviv. Thank you for joining us for this session. We welcome here Dominique Rossetti, a senior research scientist from Scite. If you are not familiar with Scite, Scite, as Dominique wrote in one of his articles, is a citation index that displays the context of citation and classify their intent using deep learning. Here in Tel Aviv University, we have a trial until the end of September. And if you're not from Tel Aviv, you're welcome to please mute if you haven't done it yet. I'll do it for you. Okay. Sorry. Please, Dominique, let us learn what you know.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm just going to share my screen here, and you should see everything here. Yeah, so hi, I'm Dom from Scite, and really this presentation is going to be giving a walkthrough on how end users use Scite to help with their research. We do have another component to Scite, which is helping with bibliometrics research in terms of like citation analysis or sort of like scientific NLP, which I won't be touching on, but you know, feel free to follow up if that is your specific interest. This is really going to be about what Scite is and the core kind of things it enables you to do that you might not be able to do in other scholarly tools like Scopus, Web of Science, Google Scholar, and those kinds of things. In case you missed it, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to type them out in chat, and I'll monitor that. Otherwise, I'll leave time at the end to address any questions you have. And yeah, so I'll follow up with these slides too. I know you'll do a recording, but just in case they're useful or have links. So what is Scite and what it helps you do? So I'm going to go over kind of just different scenarios researchers use Scite before I kind of talk about what it is. So what we're going to go over in this presentation is how you find literature, so how you find papers like in a sort of discovery type of situation, but really the focus here is how do you find papers that are critical of other papers, that have been well supported, that have been replicated, and so on. Also going to be a little bit related how to find citations. And again, this isn't sort of, you know, who has cited my work or who has cited work of interest, but it's really why is my work being cited? What are the common reasons? Is it people are using a method from my paper? People are, you know, disputing me, or am I trying to find some kind of gap in one critical paper in my field? Then we're going to talk about a little bit more on the evaluation of research output side, which might be of interest to folks who are maybe librarians or research administrators or doing grant and funding work, where we have some mechanisms for evaluating papers or authors or research outputs for, say, a research asset you're working on in the drug space or something like that. We do have some, and I'm gonna be weary of time, so we may not get to this, but we do have some functionality on keeping track of publications and staying up to date with citation alerts that are a little bit different from what you might see in Google Scholar or a native journal alert. And then, yeah, I'll go over questions, how to get help, and then just a little bit, if you do citation analysis, scientific NLP kind of research, how you could get access to our data if that's something of interest. So what is Scite? Where does it come from? Really, the Scite comes from this problem with citations where how we evaluate publications is we tend to, and we all kind of know this is maybe a problematic way of looking at things. We tend to look at the number of citations as this proxy for impact. And so, that's not always a bad thing. Certainly, if a paper's attracted many citations, there's something important to it. But really in this number, and so here this is just from Plum Analytics, which is just a citation analysis tool similar to other ones. We see that there's 1,600 citations, and we might think, oh, this publication, maybe it's good quality. It's attracted many citations, but actually. That's not always the case. This number hides a lot of information, and so this publication is famous for being retracted. In fact, retracted many times. It's the publication that suggested a link between autism and vaccines, and many of the citations are actually very critical of this publication, including trying to do replication studies and not being able to replicate, finding flaws in the methodology, and so on. So even though there are 1,600 citations, many of those citations are very critical. So this number is not a proxy for quality, and that's something Scite can help us dig into. Similarly, if we have a publication that has a low count of citations, we might skip over it, or we might not think that there's that many interesting things to it, but just because there's a low count of citations, it doesn't mean there aren't supporting citations that make the results in this paper important result in the field. And just a warning for everybody here, I am a computational linguist by training, and so all my examples will tend to be from computer science and natural language processing and linguistics. So you'll have to kind of translate it into your brain, whatever papers you're interested. And while I'm presenting, feel free to sort of go on site with your Tel Aviv access and experiment with some of the things I'm suggesting, or look up papers, or as I'll send the slides over, and you can do that after. And so getting back to this, we might have multiple supporting citations that show that the result, or a specific result in this paper, is a strong result. And so the claims that are made in this paper might not only be interesting for us to read, but also to cite and use supporting information in our own work. And so what you see here with these supporting things, I'll go into them kind of over and over in this presentation, but this is really what it looks like in Scite. What we're really looking at is like, what do citations say? And Scite is a tool that surfaces everything that's being said about a publication for you to read it in one place without having to worry about full text access, or trying to find these citations, or something I'll go over in quite a bit of detail, whether the citations are relevant, because there's a common problem that you might have faced. If a publication has thousands or even tens of thousands of citations, how do you know which ones are important to go and find and read, or how do you know which ones are relevant to you? And that's what Scite solves. So just a little bit of summary of the core thing that Scite does. Finding relevant papers is easy. There are many tools that help with discovery, but finding debate, disagreement, critical engagement, support, and those kinds of things are really hard. What you really need to do in sort of the old pre-Scite world is basically open every single citation, make notes on all of the citations, and try to find, a nugget of gold in regards to disagreement or critical engagement with the publication. Because as you might have noticed, many citations are what are called perfunctory. In other words, you cite it in passing. You're not really, maybe it's to support or justify something you're saying, but you're not really engaging with the paper. So you really want to find these citations that are highly engaged with to gather information about, interesting information about a publication. And so this is what Scite reports look like. I'll go into this in a bit more detail, but essentially what Scite is going to do is let you look at any publication of interest and see all of the citations and to the publication and read what those citations say, and then help you find relevant citations. And again, without having you to go and in some cases buy the full texts or beg your librarian to add it to the collection and so on. So we do work with publishers to make sure that people can read at least the snippets for citations without having access to the full texts. So I'm going to go over kind of the first core thing that people really get introduced to Scite for, which is this idea of supporting and disputing papers and how to find them. The first thing typically people do when they become Scite users is they install our extension, our browser extension, which works for Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Microsoft Edge. And the reason why is because what our Scite extension does, and it is there's this badge that pops up on the side, and you can see it here on the very bottom sort of left-hand side for this paper in an MIT journal. And this badge, what it shows is the number of citations, which is, sometimes interesting information, like there's 1,361 citations to this paper. The number of supporting citations, so the number of times this publication has been supported, and I'll go over a little bit more about what we mean by supported, but just to say now, supported is this kind of umbrella category for things like replications, partial replications, in other domains like humanities, it's maybe justifying similar arguments by maybe there's some kind of review work that brings quite a bit of evidence to show that this publication may be just in its findings and claims, and so that's kind of what supporting is. Then we have this 956 number, 57 number, which is mentioning citation. These are your typical background citations, mentioning for methodological support and so on. And then one contrasting citation. And a contrasting citation, again, is an umbrella term capturing anywhere from, we tried to replicate this paper and we couldn't, to we replicated the paper, but our results are, slightly different by this amount. Or it could be critical engagement with the paper saying, these are the flaws that we found in this paper. And so the badge allows, with the extension, allows you to have a small snapshot, a small summary of what other publications are saying about this publication. And a lot of people use it as some kind of, just like, you might use the citation number as some kind of proxy for impact. People tend to use these supporting and contrasting numbers as some sort of proxy for quality. Of course, warning, quality of a publication, it is very complex, and these numbers do not capture the full scope of quality of literature, but they do capture something about how other people think about this publication and what other experiments and arguments have been put forward in regards to this paper. So there is some capture of quality. So after it, oops, when I click these, it goes to the thing. Okay, so after installing the extension, the second sort of common place people start is creating a Scite account which if you log in either on a Tel Aviv IP or with Easy Proxy, I believe was set up, or just with your Tel Aviv email, you'll be able to get a Scite account with unlimited access during the trial. And when you create a Scite account, you'll go through this walkthrough we've since updated this. So this slide is a little bit old, but it's a very similar walkthrough on kind of where you at in your research journey. Are you an early career researcher or a student where you're working on a manuscript and you kind of need help finding justification for claims or discovery of papers, or even applying to a PhD program and you're sort of interested in critical gaps in the literature that have been identified by others. Are you a seasoned researcher and you want to see how your publications have been cited? How are people engaging with your publications, and so on? So in creating a Scite account, you'll go through a walkthrough depending on where you are in your research journey, and the kinds of things you're interested in seeing with regards to how publications have been cited. The next thing that people typically do is use our search. Again, we've done so many updates recently over the summer that I should update these slides. Our search is slightly different now, but people typically will search for either a topic of interest, or they'll search for a publication that they know or a publication of their own to see sort of how it's been cited. And so we have like a typical metadata search that you would see in Semantic Scholar or Google Scholar, or a scholarly database, and it allows you to search for publications. And we mirror Crossref, meaning we have the same kind of comprehensive coverage of metadata that almost all scholarly databases use Crossref for constructing their metadata search experience. And so this is really just a way for you to find publications. However, the difference that you might not see, that you won't see in other scholarly indexes, is you will be able to order by citation type. So you'll be able to say, again, this is my discipline I work in, so I'm interested in pre-training and language models and natural language processing, so I type that in. But I kind of want to see what are the most supported papers, and that's something you can order results by the most supported paper or the most contrasted paper, or both. So maybe you want to see some sort of debate going on about a publication, and Scite search allows you to do that. The next kind of common use case is viewing a Scite report. So once you've found a publication of interest, this is really where people sort of engage with Scite. And here is just a publication of interest in my field, where you'll see the report. It'll show typical things you would see on a publisher's webpage, like the title and the abstract and so on. But the key difference here is you're able to inspect what the citations to this publication. So the publication here is Language Models as Knowledge Bases. And here's a publication. It's What Does My QA Model Know by Richardson, 2019. And What Does My QA Model Know cites this paper, Language Models as Knowledge Bases. And these snippets here, which are the things in quotes, are extracted from the full text of the paper and linked to this paper. And so this text here is from What Does My QA Model Know? And it's showing what was said about language models as knowledge bases, or Petroni 2019. And you can see there's a supporting citation, and it makes sense, right? They say, we find consistent with recent probing studies, Petroni 2019, that transformer-based models have a remarkable ability to answer questions that involve complex forms of relational knowledge. And again, you can sort of take that as face value, or you can inspect, why are they finding that consistent finding? What experiments have they done to do that, and so on. But the supporting citation allows you to use cite reports to find these citations, inspect what's being said, and really see if maybe this publication is of interest to read, or maybe that sort of you're considering citing language models as knowledge bases for a claim you're making, and you feel more comfortable about doing that because others have also found consistent results. And I'm going to kind of go over in quite a bit detail this case of finding citations and so on in a little bit, under like a manuscript writing setting. But for now, that's kind of what cite reports do. And there are other finding aids on the side, like being able to see where the citation came from, like results, a section, or what year the publications came from, or search these citation statements and so on. But this is really the core thing that Scite does: show these citation statements, let you read them without having to access the full text or find these, and engage with them for whatever reason you need to find relevant information about a publication. And then finally, once people get familiar with performing literature searches in Scite, viewing Scite reports, gathering citation information, and so on, they start to use the ability to really hone down the kinds of information they're looking for by whether they are looking for supporting citations, whether study's been replicated, or whether there's been similar arguments, or contrasting citations, so gaps and criticisms about a paper. And so yeah, these are just two examples. I kind of went into the bottom one before, but here just to show contrasting result. It's just that in this paper, quite well known now, Negated and Misprimed Probes by Kastner 2020, the reason why they're citing this paper is they're saying, whereas Petroni's results suggest that pre-trained language models are able to memorize facts, our results indicate that pre-trained language models largely do not learn the meaning of negation. So it's not a full dispute of their claim, but it's a dispute of one small ability within this idea of memorizing facts. So that's kind of to give you an idea of what contrasting might mean. Now, again, you'll have to translate this in your mind to your own fields, whether that be pharmacology or something else. But it's a similar kind of a way of using scientific language that we can share across disciplines that allows us at Scite to identify these supporting and contrasting citations. So I'm gonna spend most of this walkthrough on this kind of manuscript writing type of a setting, because after you've learned to use Scite for discovery, especially of supporting and contrasting papers, and you're starting to sort of understand that Scite surfaces critical I mean the main kind of interest for me is the ability to find critical information, and you're familiar with that. The next kind of step is that commonly people sort of get into with using Scite as a tool is during manuscript writing, and it's finding citations for claims, and so on. So I'll just kind of give a little bit of an overview of that, and spend quite a bit of time on these use cases during manuscript writing. But there are other cases where you might use Scite in a similar way, say for things like grant applications, or say a research, a design proposal, and so on, where you might want to understand whether a specific claim has been supported or disputed. So now what we're doing is, instead of looking at in a publication-centric view, we're going to look at a claim-centric view. Okay, so now what we're not sort of, Scite is interesting for looking at disputes of publications, supports of publications, and so on. But another thing it allows you to do is actually look at whether claims have been supported or disputed. So in other words, if you have some claim, and so you'll have to bear with me, this is like just a claim from my field. So if you have some claim, Bert has, just treat this as this is a claim. Bert has been shown to encode semantic information at higher layers, while syntactic information is encoded at lower layers. This is for large pre-trained language models in natural language processing. And so, you might remember a claim in your field, or you might sort of have found some kind of results that suggest something, but you might forget where that claim was made in the literature, or you might just have an idea and you're not sure if other people have addressed this claim before. So what you can do in Scite is, again, the interface for citation statement search has changed a little bit, but we have this ability for you to search a claim, just like a natural language claim. So I'm really just copying, this text here and putting it in here. And when you search a claim, you can see out of all of our citation statements, which is now over 1.1 billion citation statements that we've indexed, you can see, have other people also made similar claims? And so if I just go down to the second one here, these are both from the same paper, but it's just a different snippet. You can see that this paper, Spying on Your Neighbors, 2020, they actually cite this paper for for that reason. Okay, so they're citing this paper, Tenney et al. 2019, for Tenney et al. 2019 for the reason, and they're citing Jawahar as well as a co-citation, that BERT encodes local syntactic information at lower layers and semantic information at higher layers. Okay, so when I searched my claim, I'm getting citation statements that show me who else has made this claim. And so the power of this really is, now what I've done is I found a citation for that claim. Because other people have also cited Tenney and Jawahar for this claim, maybe that means I'm justified in supporting this claim. And of course, you would never want to do that uncritically, but this allows you to find out whether you can or cannot actually support your claim with the citation. So what you can do is, after you've put whatever claim of interest of yours into the citation statement search, which is now united in our search. So we just have one search. You can just put in a claim, or sort of a question, or whatever. You can have access to the ability to find out whether or not there's supporting citations for that. And so just to zoom in on here, we have a publication that is the Spying on Your Neighbors that is citing Tenney 2019 to support a similar claim, or basically the exact same. And so that allows us to, put the citation here in our manuscript while we're writing. Here we have other scholars have cited this when they've made this claim. So I can also cite this. Of course, you'll have to read the paper and know whether it's an appropriate citation. But we also kind of help with understanding, is this citation appropriate for this claim? And so what you can do is you can look at this paper. This is the Scite report for Tenney 2019. It's called BERT Rediscovers a Classical NLP Pipeline. And you can read the citations to that paper and see there's supporting citations here. You can see if these supporting citations support this paper. And these supporting citations indeed do support fully replicate or replicate partially that claim that I made earlier here. So if other authors, by reading the Scite report, if other authors have also, you know, not only made this claim, but replicated this claim from Tenney et al., which you can see by looking at this Scite report for Tenney et al., then you have, you know, a lot more confidence that indeed this claim is justified by supporting, citing Tenney et al. Now, of course, one thing I'll go into is this idea of prior art, and, you know, who was the first to make a claim, and, you know, because you kind of want to cite not, you know, derivative works for a claim, but, you know, the original claim, where the original claim comes from. But, you know, these are all sort of good citations that justify this claim. And so this is just like me copying and pasting these citation statements here, but, you know, it's just 3 that not only use or sometimes they use Tenney et al. To make the same claim, but they also, you know, have experiments that show the same claim under a different experimental design, or have replicated it. So with Scite, you can easily see that many authors also cite this for the same reason, and so, you know, it's an appropriate citation. So that's kind of around the idea of finding citations for a claim. Now, we can also find additional independent support for a claim, which means that sometimes if we have some claim and we know that it's been supported in some line of work, we would be a lot more confident if there's actually independent supports that were a bit separate from that. And so I actually kind of went into this a little bit, but if you see on the side of Scite reports, this ability to filter by citation types. So here, you know, supporting, there's 34 supporting citations. You can sort of just click in to just see the supporting citations. These publications are independent supports of the claim that we're citing in Tenney 2019, and you can read those. And you can sort of use those for support to show, you know, you could say something in your manuscript like, you know, this claim, and then the citation for where the claim from, and then you can say, well, which was independently supported by, you know, a sample of these or something like that. So really the power here in Scite reports, once you've found, you know, a source of a claim that you've searched for, or how a claim's been discussed, is whether or not there are independent supports. And there being 34, I can tell you that there being 34 supports, though they're not all full replication, is a very, very good indicator of the strength of a claim. And so, you know, that's all interesting and well and good, but as scholars, where we're trying to answer novel research questions, we are far more interested, I think, in critical discussion and debate. And that's another thing that Scite allows you to do. And so, you know, while we might be able to say, like, this claim has been seen in subsequent studies showing the same result and so on, we kind of want to know, is there critical discussion of this claim? Because even if something has been replicated, maybe there are emerging approaches, or maybe there's some sort of underlying flaw to all of these studies that, you know, really hasn't been addressed. A thing that happens in my discipline many times is, you know, one paper will produce an automatic metric for evaluating things, some kind of measure. And in that paper, it's validated by humans, a human study. So it correlates with humans, you know, understanding of quality or utility of some kind of program or machine learning output. But then many papers will pile on using the same automated metric without validating on humans, and they sort of slightly tweak the approach, introduce new kinds of architectures and so on, till the point where, you know, they're using the same automated metric 10 years later, but the architecture changes are so drastic that we're not really sure that that metric is really correlated any longer with human validity under those architectures. So that's like an example of the kinds of criticisms that you want to find in literature, so you don't make the same mistake, right? Or if you're doing a literature review to sort of surface potential issues, or my favorite use case of using contrasting citations, identify areas of research to work on. And so here's like a contrasting citation to that paper, which is that Tenney, it's the same claim, sort of, that semantics can be extracted from the encoder and follow syntax in the layer structure. But this paper criticizes that because what it's saying is that the type of semantic information that's being captured in these higher layers is more of a syntactico-semantic type of information. It isn't sort of higher type of compositional semantics or other types of semantics. So it's making a distinction on the types of semantics and saying we should be critical of this claim because maybe when it's saying semantics, it hasn't justified itself appropriately in saying this type of semantics, this type of constrained semantics, and that are being measured. And so, you can sort of imagine a manuscript situation as a writing situation, as I'm saying, and here they're saying, oh, well, we should be careful about what is meant by semantic information, as a semantic task in Tenney et al. Only demonstrate proficiency with prop bank based on lexicosemantic tasks, not compositional semantics. And so, maybe that can spur you on and be like, well, oh, we should design an experiment that addresses this, or something like that. What about similar citations or other prior art? So, you sometimes, especially in very rigorous settings, you want to make sure that the claim originates from like an original paper, and there aren't prior arts. Or you want to know, the full scope of similar citations where other people have made the same claim sort of independently. And so we can also find prior art by going back to the searching the claim and seeing what else is cited for that claim. And if you know what co-cites are, that's what these are, citations that are cited together. And so this other paper, Jawahar 2019, What Does BERT Learn About the Structure of Language? Looks like it's being co-cited when people make that claim. And so, I sort of won't go into, or maybe actually do. I won't. Okay, so yeah, people might, or people for this particular claim also cite Jawahar, and so maybe that gives us an indicator to read Jawahar, understand, is this prior art, or were they influenced by each other? Either way, this claim was made by two papers independently. Since Jawahar doesn't cite Tenney, I don't believe. And so what we can do is sort of repeat the process that I've just mentioned with, for writing and doing research with Scite. So it's not, in the earlier part of the presentation, I was really discussing discovery with Scite, how to find publications of interest. And this is more doing writing and research with Scite. So it's engaging the process after discovery. And so what you can do, I just say, is repeat. You can repeat the steps that I just mentioned, and you can sort of go, okay, well, Jawahar, does it have independent supports? Are other people citing it for the same reasons? Is there anything critical about Jawahar, which I'm showing here, which is it's a similar criticism of Tenny, which is that, you know, they're not exploring like a rhetorical information in these models. And so that's, you know, another criticism to add to your manuscript, and so on. So, you know, you can just repeat these steps, going through claims that you've made in your paper, searching them in Scite, or you know, other manuscript and so on. And so that's kind of like those two things, finding papers, well-supported or disputed papers, and writing with Scite. Those two things are kind of really the core reasons why people use Scite, and you can probably see why, and it's because we surface the citation context, these citation statements that allow you to see what's being said about a paper without really having to leave the platform, leave Scite and go, you know, download or buy the full text, look for the citation, see if it's relevant or not, and do that hundreds or thousands of times until you find like the 34 supporting citation. I mean, you can sort of see, if I just go back here, you can imagine how much effort would it be that, you know, this is being cited by 265 publications. How much effort would it be to find, download, or buy 265 publications and search or read them for these 34 supporting citations? You know, that is a lot of effort. So that's really what Scite is designed for. And okay, so there is a question here. Does Scite indicate if a paper was retracted? Does it take it into account in report? And yes, so we try to be very comprehensive about editorial notices, including retractions, withdrawals, erratum, corrections, and so on. And so it is quite, I don't have an example in my presentation, but if you do search a retracted paper, it is quite visible. Basically, it's like a little badge that appears showing the retraction, and that is linked to the retraction notice. So you can read the retraction notice and see why it was retracted, why it was withdrawn, what is the erratum or correction. We think that's really important. So yes, certainly we do indicate if a paper was retracted, and it's taken into account in the report by these badges that link to the retraction notices, because sometimes there are legitimate reasons to cite something retracted, like you know, just to give context to a field of research when introducing it, or and so on. Obviously not for using the same claims, but you know, you might in the erratum case or correction, it might be very valuable to still cite something for the same claim, and even mention the erratum, or maybe it doesn't apply to the specific claim that you're making because it's not the one that had erratum. So I hope that answered the question. And if not, feel free to follow up. So I'm going to continue for just a few minutes to touch on a few of the other features of Scite that are a little bit more advanced. I do want to leave some time for questions as well. So this might kind of be a breeze by, but in the questions you can ask, you know, me to go in depth in these things, and that's fine. Purchased a tool. Oh, thank you very much for the explanation. I would like to know if there's are any academic institutions that have purchased a tool. So this is a direct message, but I'll read it anyway, because it might be interesting to others. Any institutions that have purchased a tool? Is there a list of these institutions? I, off the top of my head, you know, we try to list them on the website. So there's like Singapore Management University, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, a bunch of different labs, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. There's so many that I don't think we have a comprehensive list though. So certainly if you go to scite.ai, we have like a news and press thing, and it'll show some of the institutions, but those tend to be institutions we work on partnerships like for integrating with our institutional repository, or doing you know, research output evaluation with them. So those are more kind of around ones that we work with in a research capacity, but they've purchased a license. So yeah, what I'll say is, if people want to know like a list of institutions that have purchased a license for Scite, certainly feel free to follow up with me on my email, which is dom@scite.ai, and I'll just type it in the chat. Anyone can sort of follow up with me for any questions on this. But yeah, I could get a list of people who have organizational license. And at the end, I think I'd discuss a little bit more about what organizational licenses look like and so on. Okay, so just going back to this, evaluate publications, authors, institutions. This isn't the focus of the presentation, because this presentation is more for end users, or what the sort of user experience of Scite is. But there are many users of Scite who have an interest in evaluating research outputs, especially because they have access to things like how many times have my department or my university's publications have been disputed, like should we address those things, and so on. But I'll just go a little bit into detail. So one thing you can do is you can create sort of similar things to Mendeley, Zotero, Google Scholar type of research collections where you save papers, especially from search results, or anywhere, and you can add them to a dashboard. And what a dashboard does is just provide aggregate information about those papers. So aggregate information about the top authors, articles, will let you sort them by supporting and citing and so on. There are also a lot more to creating a dashboard. You can sort of create it from a Zotero Mendeley library or entering your own DOIs. But again, I'm not going to go too much into detail about dashboards. We also have a Zotero plugin, which shows, just kind of like the extension, shows the supporting, contrasting and mentioning metrics natively in Zotero. We have author profiles, so you can see, how an author's been cited or how they cite others, including supporting and contrasting citations. So anytime you are using Scite, an author's name will be linked to its profile, so you can inspect these things. For institutions, right? I'm using Alan AI or AI2 here, but you could easily search for Tel Aviv to see how the outputs of Tel Aviv, and just an aggregate view of all the publication outputs of an institution. So, how many times in aggregate have the publications been supported? How many times have they been contrasted? As to someone else's question earlier in the presentation, what editorial notices have collected for those publications? We do have some sort of Scite index to measure sort of citation things, which I won't get into, but just an idea that you can evaluate your institutions or an institution's research outputs in this way. Top publishing authors and so on, and the top sort of articles by supporting or from that institution. Like maybe there's a tenure and promotion committee, and that's something of interest. That's a use case we've had many times before. And I'll do one final thing. I'll sort of skip over setting alerts, but just suffice it to say that you can set alerts for when new citations happen. You can read what those citations were natively right in your email or right on our Scite feed. So you can stay up to date with what's being said about a publication, but also you can upload manuscripts and check the quality of your references. This is actually something that we're integrated with many submission systems. So you might actually have seen this before, though not on Scite. Well, we typically send the metrics to the publishers, but things like Scholar One and Manuscript Manager and so on use this. And it just shows, oh, here's the badges for the retraction that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, it shows, the references you've used and kind of flags things like you should look at the editorial notices here. So, there's many comments. There's an erratum, there's a retraction, there's an expression of concern here in these badges, and all of these badges link to that information, so you can inspect. But also, you might want to see if a reference you're using in your manuscript that you uploaded here has been highly disputed or something. Now, I am going to skip just to give lots of information about the Scite alerts, but it's essentially like Google Scholar alerts, but shows you what's being said in the citation. So you don't have to go like download the paper and read it and so on. So yeah, and you can set alerts to anything like institutions or journals, so it's like table of contents alerts. And then it will show like in a feed, or you can choose to have it sent to your email on a weekly or daily basis or something like that. How to get help or how to get started? I mean, the best place to start is installing the Scite extension. You don't even need an account to use it. It's completely free and will be free whether Tel Aviv chooses to purchase a license or not. And the extension will always be free for anybody. And then creating an account and going through onboarding is a great way to get started. But of course, you can always email me, which I put my email in the chat, or hi@scite.ai. We do have a live chat. I should always like amend this with we're on Eastern Standard Time, so our days are only a little bit overlapping, but of course, like anything that we don't answer right away, we'll follow up with when we're online. And then there's a help page, there's a blog with tutorials. We're starting to be very active in posting YouTube things, both in terms of like longer form. So you'll see like our presentations we give about evaluating research outputs, or presentations we give about doing scientific NLP and so on our YouTube channel. And finally, if you are interested in doing research with Scite data, you're always welcome to contact us. And we're happy to like give you data for research purposes if you work in bibliometrics or scientific NLP or want to do some kind of research evaluation project. So I'm happy now to take any questions, either if you want to put in the chat or if you want to unmute, feel free to. And yeah, that's about it for the presentation.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so thank you, Dominique. I think all the participants really evaluate this demonstration and the impact that Scite could have on publishing and about how we use the databases and the articles and the citation, of course. I would really appreciate if any of the participants will give us their input about this product. Please try it and let us know. This will help us to decide how to go on with our communication with the Scite. So, and we'll make the recording available in our website, or if you want us to send it to you, please let us know. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you all. And feel free to email me or email us at Scite, if you ever have any questions or want to know more.
Okay. Thank you. Toda.
Thanks. Bye.